My friends, elite analysts, the world stage has changed hands and Brasilia still hasn't realized the true scale of the disaster knocking at our door. While the system was trying to sell you the comfortable idea that Brazil was isolating the opposition and consolidating international leadership, the unthinkable happened behind the scenes in Washington this May 2026. Flavio and Eduardo Bolsonaro didn't just visit candidates or take political tourism photos on American sidewalks. They were invited and welcomed at the heart of world power by President Donald Trump, Vice President Joe Vance, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Remember that name. Look at how serious this is, my friends. What I'm going to show you today is the exact content of the meetings. High-security meetings that made the Planalto Palace go into absolute panic mode and brought the gears of official diplomacy to a halt. The activist press has stooped to the pathetic point of trying to push the narrative that the images from inside the Oval Office were fakes produced by artificial intelligence or souvenirs bought at White House gift shops. But the hard facts crush the lie. The Brazilian system has completely lost its connection with the real world. And I'm going to prove to you line by line why time has stopped being a warning and has turned into an official countdown to the collapse of the bureaucratic structures in Brasilia. Or if the system still has the strength to try to deceive the people, don't decide too soon. The evidence collected in the West Wing will completely change your perception. Now subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like the video because it takes so much work to make, my friends. You know that rehearsed narrative that Lula's government and its media allies were trying to spread? Claiming that the American authorities were fully in agreement with the censorship measures and the throttling of social media in Brazil? Well, my friends, that was definitively put to rest within the command center. The Vice President of the United States, the man who acts as Trump's right-hand man and the most influential voice from Silicon Valley within the government, was strikingly clear behind the scenes. It's a blatant lie. Pay attention to this, because Vance is not just watching the situation from afar with formal diplomatic concern. He is the political and economic guarantor of the biggest American big tech companies that support the infrastructure of the global internet. The message delivered by the emissaries from Brasilia was direct and without intermediaries. If the Brazilian state apparatus dares touch American companies, or continues to confiscate accounts and summarily ban profiles, Washington's response will not come through official statements or tacky bureaucratic condemnations. It will come in the form of real economic sanctions and asset freezes that will suffocate the state's cash flow. This means that the moment the Brazilian system tries to sign a new censorship decree against an American platform, by the time the Trump administration's retaliatory response is triggered, the architects of lawfare won't even have time to justify the act. It's the imposition of sovereignty by the force of market law. The Brazilian system thought it could intimidate international capital using local decrees, but it ran head-on into a geopolitical steel wall that protects Washington's technological interests at the speed of light. In politics, here's what happens. The institutional tyranny thought it had a weapon in its hands to silence dissent, but now it realizes it just has a giant target painted on its own back by the new American administration. And this is where things really get tough and the situation gets even uglier for the Planalto Palace. My friends, the delegation of Flavio Bolsonaro, Eduardo Bolsonaro, and the journalist and businessman Paulo Figueiredo did not come empty-handed. They handed over a robust intelligence dossier directly to Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the White House leadership, containing material evidence that Brazil has become the largest logistical and financial hub for Hezbollah and Hamas in Latin America. I believe this is the most important moment of our conversation today because this will totally destroy the Workers' Party's strategy to win the next elections. And the dossier shows the operation through the criminal structures of the PCC and the Red Command. Look at the level of danger. The data presented is staggering and even shocks President Trump himself. More than a quarter of the Brazilian population today lives and works in territory completely controlled by armed criminal factions, where the state has lost the ability to exercise any sovereignty. In the capitals, 56%. And law-abiding citizens feel completely powerless because of the violence of organized crime, which imposes curfews and controls basic public services like gas, internet, and electricity. And the greatest international shame, something that would disgust even the most fanatical voter, was the revelation that the Brazilian government was caught doing aggressive, behind-the-scenes lobbying in Washington. Sought to stop PCC and Comando Vermelho from being formally designated as foreign terrorist organizations.
Formalmente como organizações terroristas estrangeiras, as FTOs.
Why? Did the president and Minister Mauro Vieira send high-level emissaries? To protect the legal status and bank accounts of transnational criminal factions that are flooding the United States with weapons and fentanyl connections? Trump and Vice President Vance have already discovered the hidden answer. They mapped out how this mechanism uses sophisticated Brazilian financial systems to launder money for cartels like Sinaloa and the Tren de Aragua gang without facing any structural sanctions. Look at this. And to expose the international connections of this underworld, the dossier detailed the case of the Brazilian mega-trafficker who was on the run and was captured in Bolivia. The same territory where Evo Morales, a historical ally of the São Paulo Forum and connected to the coca cartels, is trying to trigger a bloody coup. A violent one, blocking roads and isolating entire cities like Santa Cruz de la Sierra and Cochabamba. All to overthrow the government that arrested the criminal. When Flavio Bolsonaro detailed this ecosystem and mentioned the official public security plan presented by Brasilia, laughter broke out throughout the meeting room. Everyone there knew that the Brazilian government's rhetoric is a complete lie to fool suckers. That is when Trump signs the FTO designation. The entire financial system that fuels political power in Brasilia and the billionaire lobbying of operators like José Josley Batista will be blown up by the immediate freezing of assets abroad. My friends, things are about to get ugly. Elite analysts understand the masterful game and the fatal tactical mistake that Lula made out of pure ideological arrogance. President Trump had temporarily suspended the enforcement of the global Magnitsky Act sanctions against Justice Alexandre de Moraes and other system operators as a calculated gesture of international goodwill. A test of trust to see if the Brazilian regime would back down from its authoritarian drive. And what did Brasilia do with this diplomatic opening? That is the question. Well, instead of backing down from political persecution and restoring the fundamental guarantees of the opposition, the system doubled down, accelerated the investigations, and kept up the squeeze. And Flavio Bolsonaro and his team brought into the Oval Office the indisputable evidence of this institutional betrayal. Trump and his cabinet are driven by the business logic of honoring agreements, and they simply do not forgive those who break behind-the-scenes strategic commitments. The suspension of the sanctions was revoked in their minds the moment the data was reviewed. The Magnitsky Act will not only come back to haunt the corridors of power in Brasilia, it will return. It will return with legal, financial, and international restrictions unlike anything the Brazilian establishment has ever seen. They thought that Trump's initial retreat was a sign of weakness or lack of interest in South America. That's a fact. But they will find out in the worst possible way that the American leader was just giving the Brazilian system enough rope to hang itself with its own arrogance. My friends, the real map of power in the Americas is now crystal clear. From the sidelines, from the board, you see the Brazilian opposition moving freely and exclusively through the most important offices on the planet. Being received with state honors and receiving from the President of the United States himself the Medal of Honor, the coveted official challenge coin, a token of extraordinary closeness that the current leader in Brasilia will never, ever receive. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have the Lula government and the billionaire José Josley Batista from JBS. Desperately trying to use his old checkbook and spend fortunes on luxury lobbyists in Washington to try to buy influence and clean up the regime's image with money from protein and oil wells in Maduro's Venezuela. Just so you know, Jose Joisley Batista helped finance President Trump's inauguration party to get access and also sponsored, get this, the movie about Trump's wife. He sent money there, all to try to get Lula a seat at Trump's table. But the plan backfired, my friends, because in Washington in 2026, dirty money from corporate corruption has completely lost all currency. The Trump administration is not interested in the shady businessmen from the meat cartel. He demands stability, the end of political persecution, and the definitive choking off of funding for terrorism in South America. And this here is the most important thing, the funding of terrorism in South America. Guys, you have no idea how many Hezbollah and Hamas terrorists have infiltrated Brazil. Write this down so you don't forget, because this is the main reason for Trump's interest in stabilizing things in Brazil. The system tried to buy the world through institutionalized bribery, but forgot that the world has changed. The world now is governed by principles of strength and real order. Because that's exactly what corruption is. You create terrorism, you create organized crime, you create inflation. Unbridled corruption. And who wants that, you know? The bad guys. Have you noticed the sudden silence and abrupt change in tone that has taken over the major Brazilian media in recent days? No, my friends. The retreat was so severe that even the columnists most aligned with the system, like Merval Pereira from Rede Globo, were forced to publicly admit the obvious. Flavio Bolsonaro's agenda in the United States was an absolute and unprecedented political success for a prospective candidate. To repeat, he spoke with Marco Rubio, the most powerful and influential man within the government, who declared war against the São Paulo Forum. He spoke with the Vice President of the United States, the front man for the big tech companies. And obviously with the big boss behind it all, Donald Trump. That's because Flavio is a pre-candidate for the presidency. He's not the president yet, guys. Do you understand the level of access that Flavio has in the United States? My friends, the financial market and the big shots from Faria Lima have already sensed the change in the wind and started to jump ship from the sinking boat of the current government. The entire plan devised by the consortium to destroy Flavio's public image through selective leaks from the Dark Horse case and the intercept messages has gone up in smoke and lost its validity in the face of the geopolitical power of the Oval Office. With internal Datafolha polls proving that the impact on the candidacy was irrelevant. He kept pushing, put out stories, released audio, leaked it. The journalists were pulling their hair out, and in the end, it ended in a tie. The panic is so great that the system activated its militants disguised as journalists to try to invade the privacy and harass the family of Eduardo Bolsonaro right at his home. But the message has been given under the American laws of Florida and Texas. Anyone who crosses the line of private property under the pretext of activism will encounter the castle doctrine, which guarantees the use of lethal force to protect the home. Go ahead and barge into other people's homes. Yeah, you can tell exactly which criminal ecosystem the right is fighting against in Brazil. Look, folks. What terrifies the system the most isn't Flavio's visit to Trump, but the issues tying it to organized crime, you know? The danger is you're messing with a very powerful machine. The final image of the people crowding the national airport to give a standing ovation to the heroic return of Flavio Bolsonaro to Brazil was the definitive seal of the collapse of the left's narrative. My friends, the leadership of the right has been restored on the national and international stage. The era of Brazilia's arrogance has ended irreversibly. Lula is out of time. The global clock now ticks exclusively to the rhythm dictated by Washington. And the current government is nothing more than a diplomatic zombie, devoid of any relevance or international respect. It's the aged relic that's being thrown into the closet. The Brazilian opposition didn't return from North America carrying only historical photos in their luggage. They came back with the commitment and strategic support of the greatest power on earth to restore institutional order, real public security, and economic freedom starting in January 2027. We saw the humiliation of the state lobby in Washington. We saw J.D. Vance's brutal rebuke of social media censorship. Now look at the panic scenario in the Planalto and give your technical verdict. On the one hand, the coordinated movement of the opposition outlines a surgical strategy to isolate the regime. On the other hand, the violent reaction from the press and the Brazilian Foreign Ministry exposes the terminal desperation. But now I want to separate those who just watch videos for entertainment or are looking for a casual distraction on the internet from those who truly understand the depth of the deep political game. I want your technical opinion here in the comments of this video right now. If you understood that the current government has become an isolated relic whose international signal was permanently cut off by the Oval Office, type the word collapse in the comments. But if you're sure that the direct alliance with the Trump administration and Vance is the real connection that will restart Brazil and crush the system's lawfare, type the words, "The time has come." I will read each of these comments to find out who here is an elite analyst and who is still stuck in armchair analysis. Share your perspective because the time for doubt is over. Well, the stage is set and the forces are already moving behind the scenes. For those who want to understand the real game before the system collapses for good, the way isn't only through open platforms. That's why we created our Intel Bunker, an exclusive platform, a fully protected environment where censorship simply can't stop us. Inside, more than 3,000 analysts fund the truth we bring here. We dissect every geopolitical and economic move in real time. We deliver the raw information that no one else has the courage to show. Access is on your screen now through the QR code, the pinned comment link, and the link in the video description. We also created a channel for series and movies with fantastic curation so you can enjoy the best content with your family. No woke culture, no whining. Don't waste any more time on Netflix, Amazon, or HBO looking for something interesting to watch. We already give you the right recommendation. So click the link in the description and the card for our series and movies channel that will pop up. Now for the most important part. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and leave a like on the video. It takes a lot of work to make this, my friends. Now shield your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira. See you in the next video.